Thank you for joining us for our presentation, Partnering with Student Journals to Increase Visibility and Discoverability. My name is Jeanette Hatherill. I'm a scholarly communication librarian at the University of Ottawa, and I'm joined today by Omar and Zach, who are the co-editors of the University of Ottawa Journal of Medicine. So at U Ottawa, we've been operating our journal hosting and publishing services since about 2011. So we host 8 faculty-run journals with 3 in development. We have 5 student-run journals, which are active. We have one that is intermittently active, and we have an archived one as well. We're using OJS 3.1, and it's hosted out of the service arm of our provincial consortium, the Ontario Council of University Libraries. So thanks to this consortial approach to the technical infrastructure, we've been able to operate on a pretty lean team of myself, and I have about a 0.3 FTE to devote to our journal services. We are a bilingual institution, French-English, and so most of our journals are bilingual, but we do have a couple of unilingual French and English journals as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Omar Dewidar and I am one of the editors-in-chief for the University of Ottawa Journal of Medicine. Now, just to give you guys a bit of background about our journal, we mainly publish research on healthcare and medical practice, and we've been officially instated since 2011. And we also got recently indexed in Directory of Open Access Journals, and Jeanette will talk about that a bit. We publish 2 issues per year, and what's really unique about UOJM is that we are one of the only bilingual university medical journals. So our 2 issues are released usually in the spring and the fall. And if you're really interested in learning more about the journal, please check out our Facebook and Twitter pages and by scanning these QR codes. And what we've recently implemented is a continuous publication model. So the papers that are accepted at UOJM are published instantly, and then if they fit within the theme of the issue, they are released within the issue as well. Now, that is a complicated process in terms of assigning the DOIs and stuff, and we wouldn't have been able to implement that without the help of our information scientists. So student-run journals are very important for us because they first engage students in the peer review process, which helps them develop critical appraisal skills in their career early on. And it's a very good opportunity for students to publish papers on smaller projects that are not usually accepted in non-student-run journals. And that's why it's very important for us to improve the journals as much as we can. And one of those is by collaborating with information scientists and librarians. So for this collaboration to be very efficient, we found that it's very important to set goals at the beginning, be very transparent with the time commitments, and students are very busy with school, and the librarians are busy with other activities. So that, in combination with identifying what each party will bring to the collaboration, helps us to build an efficient collaboration.
So I'll just highlight some of the projects that we've done with UOJM to increase its visibility and discoverability. So in 2014, UOJM had already been publishing for 3 years, and they had it as just single issue PDFs on a separate website. So separating out the articles and getting them onto OJS was a really great first step, as was getting it indexed in our local catalog. In 2015, U Ottawa introduced a DOI minting service, and UOJM was actually the first DOI that we minted. So that was really great to have them on board so early. We've also given our journals the option to have their content indexed on the Scholars Portal journal platform, but not many had taken us up on the offer. So recently we changed tactics a little bit and basically said, just let us know if you don't want to be included, highlighting the increased visibility that it would offer the journal because it is a discovery platform used by universities and colleges across Canada. And it's also a trustworthy digital repository. So there was a preservation aspect there that we wanted to highlight as well. And then we've learned a few lessons with our experience with UOJM and Directory of Open Access Journals. So in 2015, the journal actually successfully applied to be indexed in DOAJ, but the library wasn't actually aware of that. So a few years later, we were doing kind of a state of discovery kind of inventory for all of our journals, and we discovered that they were indexed, but the information was out of date for editorial board, et cetera, and the article level metadata had never been sent. So we did a bit of a cleanup, made sure that the information was correct and up to date. But recently, actually, I discovered that the article metadata was no longer being sent to DOAJ. So luckily, because we had that sort of information, I was able to log in to DOAJ, generate a new API key, and kind of get it going again. So, it's good to remember that discovery is not just sort of like a checkbox. You do it once and it's done. It's good to keep kind of passwords and this kind of information shared. And of course, to check in kind of occasionally on your indexing status on platforms, because it could change without your notice.
My name is Zacharie St. George. I'm the other co-editor-in-chief at UOJM, and I'll share briefly with you some lessons learned, best practices, and challenges of student-run journals in the context of the partnership between university librarians and student running a journal. So just about the librarian-students partnership, one of the most important lessons that we as students at UOJM have learned is to rely on the counsel and the expertise of a university librarian. Students need to understand how much more they can accomplish with the help of a passionate librarian. And librarians should be aware of the gigantic difference they can make as experts, and also the way they can influence students in the best choices and the best paths to take. Regarding vision and achievable goals, avoiding the status quo is so important. As students, we can get busy very quickly and accumulate various responsibilities. Leading a journal can rapidly become a back burner responsibility where the minimal effort is done. To avoid that status quo, it's imperative to acquire a vision for the journal and set achievable goals and timelines, figuring out how we can innovate early and plan things out. Efficient workflow is so important for publishing issues on time and indirectly influenced by the recruitment of sufficient volunteers. Often the workload is not distributed evenly enough among the different positions in the journal. For us, one example of this was the publication director position, who handled almost everything in the production and design phases, often causing delays because of extreme workload. So we decided to recruit in not only one, but two publication assistants to ensure that more efficient workflow would be achieved. And I believe it's one of the best things we've done in our mandate as the co-editors-in-chief. To improve the quality of publication is a big deal, because that's one of the critique of student-run journals. So for scientific journals especially, it's now good practice to use mandatory conflict of interest forms for all co-authors and reporting guidelines to help guide toward the best practices possible in investigations. Something else that we implemented this year and really makes a difference in the quality of submissions is the addition of faculty expert reviewers. UOJM's specific peer review process now includes firstly 3 student reviewers. Their reviews are then compiled into one document by our section editors and then sent to a professor or affiliated researcher that will then not only add their comments, but also provide feedback on the review's comments. This improves greatly the quality of peer review sent back to the authors, but also helps reviewers improve in their skills. In my opinion, this provides a great model that both benefits student reviews and improves the quality of submissions. And all those tips and advice and counsel, in my opinion, can be shared in that partnership between university librarians and students.
Indexing is very important for student-run journals to get them the exposure that they need to flourish. Once we got indexed in the DOAJ, we saw a significant increase in submissions as it was more accessible to a wider audience. And this will in turn increase the reputability of our journal as a source of scientific information in the field. And it's also beneficial for students as they have the opportunity to retrieve and refer their publications to other people with ease. So it's very important for the information scientists to be involved with the student journals at this stage and highlight these benefits for the students. And they should also assist them to choosing the database that aligns with the readership of their journal, and when possible falls within the expected time commitment of the student editors. So from our experience with the PubMed indexing that we're going through right now, we've listed some things that we think that student editors and information scientists should be aware of, so they don't really, they should be aware of early on so they don't waste time going forward. So it's very important for the journal to have an editorial board, and we advise to have members from faculty to be part of that board. They should have editorial policies in place according to international standards, clearly laid out peer review process, and most importantly, for them to meet the language guidelines of PubMed, their metadata, which contains the information for the articles in the system that they're using, should be clear and consistent.
We also wanted to experiment a little bit with publishing kind of beyond the PDF, and given that the editors of UOJM were so keen to take on new projects, we thought it was a great opportunity, especially because there is some XML requirements for indexing in PubMed. So the workflow that we ended up using is based on one that was developed or reported by the University of Edinburgh Library. And it looked at using a lot of the tools within OJS to develop a XML workflow. And it's also based too on a presentation that was done at last year's Library Publishing Forum by some folks with PKP and developers of OJS software to discuss sort of these workflow developments that they've done with XML and HTML publishing. So we're excited to kind of give it a shot and see what was available. So we enabled 3 plugins for this workflow. DocX to JAT's XML converter plugin does essentially what the name suggests it would, and takes a docx and renders, creates an XML document based on that in the production phase at OJS. The texture editor is a visual XML editor that you can use. It's a pretty simple graphical user interface to edit the resulting XML document from that converter plugin. And then finally, for display, we're using an eLife lens viewer plugin, which renders XML to HTML online without the need for further conversion. So it was a bit of a learning curve to implement this workflow, a few bugs to work out, especially kind of the dependencies between some of the plugins. So it was certainly learning in a non-linear fashion. But a few key things to recognize is that it's important to format your docx to the example file in the converter plugin documentation, which may seem obvious, but when you're working with kind of a manuscript submission file that isn't structured, that has been kind of created outside of that XML requirement, it just requires a little kind of back and forth to make sure that you've got it correctly. There's also a couple of bugs that introduce sort of some document headers that don't play nicely with the texture plugin, but a little bit of manual intervention, and we managed to solve those. But after some trial and error, installing and reinstalling a few plugins, we managed to get a pretty reasonable workflow for HTML publishing within OJS at the production stage. So a couple of bugs to work out and a couple of manual interventions to do, but for available plugins in the system, it was really interesting to figure out a new workflow.